Hey folks, how you doing? Oh, Deb, you made it.
Yay, finally. Sorry about that.
I'm sorry. Honestly, we did this like fiasco of getting our tech readjusted because, somebody left their position and all the meetings were under their thing, and it's a thing. It's been a thing. I suspect it's going to be a thing for a couple more months somehow because there's going to be some documentation that's in the wrong spot.
Mm-hmm. Never fun.
Yeah, so I feel like I've been having a lack of winning in association with our Zoom tech. Hey Sandra, how are you? And Lauren, good to see you. I thought you couldn't make this
Hi.
time.
Yes, well, it starts in an hour, so I'll have to cut out a little early, but I'm really glad to be here and to meet everybody and see your faces.
Awesome, awesome. We've got market manager from somewhere. I'm learning more of these folks. Wendy Connor. We're gonna wait just a couple minutes, Debbie. Dibby. I worked with Deb a long time ago, and we worked with this woman who had an accent, um, who called Debbie Dibby. So whenever
It's
I
pretty
see
funny.
Deb in a work context, I always say Dibby.
Yep.
Carrie, good to see you. You're like in Carrie, you're in like the exact space where your Zoom background like consumes your face. If you lean back, it's kind of like an alien showed up.
I could probably do
Emily,
that.
Willie,
Try it. I got some nope.
tickers, Kathleen, good to see you. I'm gonna check my other email and make sure that there's not any other foolishness around getting logged in. This is all looking good. So did I have the wrong for you, Dad? The wrong thing on the wrong Zoom link?
No, the Zoom link was fine. It's just when I tried, the meeting password was different. It was like I had 517 or something. So
Oh, okay.
for whatever reason, yeah.
Am I the problem or are you the problem?
Well, that might have been you.
Unfortunate.
And I think it's because I think you sent me an invite singly, so it was just the two of
Mhm.
us on the invite. So that maybe that it probably generated some random password.
Seriously, I can't handle that. Aaron Marr, I haven't seen you on a call in a while. It's good. And I have like a contract just about countersigned with you. I got your half done. I'll get you countersigned before I leave. Sarah Masoni, good to see you. How are you?
I'm good.
Yeah,
Yep.
you're good and you're up to no good?
Yep.
Probably a little bit.
Always.
Is that Kim Johnson all the way from Chicago? I think it might be.
It is. It is Kim Johnson.
Ah, I like how you show up on these calls even from a distance. You love us that much.
Oh, I would never miss it. I love being connected and at a distance all at once.
We've got the fake Sydney DeLuna, who is actually Caitlin. She shows up as me because she uses the admin email. Yep. Fake Sydney right there. Look at her trying to be me.
Impossible.
I love that. All right, Deb. Um, everyone, this is Deb Bridges. She works with Safety Northwest or Northwest Safety. Sorry, I always get it wrong the first
You
time.
were right the first time.
I
No,
was
you were
right
right
the
the
first
first time.
time.
Safety Northwest, yeah.
Um, so for those of you who don't know, we have contracted with Safety Northwest to come and visit a number of our hubs. do a site visit and do a worker safety evaluation, and then provide some support to help improve worker safety in the hubs. And then also, based on what Deb has seen out in the field, come join us and share some common, I was going to say mishaps, but we don't want mishaps, common occasions of near mishap that we have in our hubs, and ways that we can plan ahead and try to not have those mishaps happen. So, Deb, take it away.
Yes. Hopefully I can share.
You should be
Oh,
able to.
okay, hold on just one second. It appears that it's not seeing my PowerPoint for some reason. It should,
But you have the
it's there.
power, right?
It's
Nothing I
there.
can
Yeah,
do
I
for
had the
you.
power.
Okay.
Yeah. But it just, for whatever reason, wasn't seeing.
I'm really happy that the problem is you, not me right now.
Oh yeah, there it is. Okay. There we go. Can everyone see that?
Yes, thank you.
Excellent. Excellent. Alrighty. So basically, yeah, I figured I would talk a little bit generally about safety, and then some of the, just some of the hazards that I've been seeing, or potential hazards that I've been seeing at some of the sites that I've been visiting. So basically, when we talk about safety, I always like to sort of take a moment to talk about what an effective safety program looks like. And then, like I said, I'll kind of talk a little bit about some common existing and potential hazards that I've seen in some of the hubs that I've visited. So these are tasks, or they might be work areas that are there. I also want to touch on the importance of reporting injuries and illnesses. And I like to say, big or small, report them all. Reporting of injuries and illnesses and near misses and close calls are a great way to illustrate hazards that might be existing in our workplaces that we didn't really realize were potential hazards. And then we'll talk a little bit about putting it all together. So first, to kind of talk about why safety is important, there are two reasons it's important. First, a regulatory reason that it's important, which is that we have to. So as an employer, you are responsible for providing a workplace that is safe and healthful for your employees, meaning that it's a workplace that's free from recognized hazards or potential hazards, anything that could really cause a short-term or long-term disability for your employees. These are, as an employer, you're required to provide that safe workplace. Employees also have responsibilities as well. They have to follow your safety policies. They have to follow your training. They have to follow procedures. But again, employers are responsible for providing that safe workplace. And that's outlined by OSHA's General Duty Clause. And this is federal OSHA's General Duty Clause. Any state-run OSHA plan, all of their standards have to be equal to or greater than federal. So obviously, Oregon, Washington, California are all state-run plans, as well as there are 21 states that have state-run plans. So I can always, if you have a question about whether or not you're a state-run plan or not that it really matters, it just would change who has jurisdiction over your employees. But anyway, again, the General Duty Clause, or some form of the General Duty Clause in your state, talks about that, furnishing a place of employment, and that it has to be safe, and that they'll do everything reasonably necessary to protect the life, safety, and health of those employees. But so that's the regulatory reason. But the other reason why safety is important is because it's the right thing to do. No one comes to work to get hurt, and your employees and your volunteers to some extent, but volunteers, OSHA doesn't have any jurisdiction over volunteers, but we still want to keep them safe. But employees and volunteers are a critical part of an organization. And if someone gets hurt at work, again, they may have a temporary or a permanent disability. And a temporary disability is something that just either results in restricted duty or light duty, or some kind of modification, whether it's a work modification or a life modification. But again, nobody comes to work to get hurt. And if someone does get hurt, when you have a small organization, everybody really feels that. So that individual is really important. Plus, all of your organizations are really close knit, and none of us want to see a coworker get hurt. Obviously, workers' compensation costs can increase our payroll costs over time. But generally, a safe work environment, if you have an environment where workers feel like their contribution matters, their safety matters, their employer listens, they're part of something bigger, that is going to result in higher productivity, higher worker morale, lower turnover, all of those kinds of things. It's really not separate from your work culture. It's a good safety culture just is really part of the whole package where someone works. So the goals of the safety program, really at the end of the day, when we look at safety and what safety means, it means that we are identifying hazards and we're correcting hazards. And again, those hazards may be existing or they may be potential. But that's really essentially what we're trying to do, because we don't want people to get hurt at work. So, and there are various ways that we can do that. We can do it because we have safety programs and we have safety policies, right? So again, as an employer, you have to provide a workplace that is free from recognized and potential hazards. So you're going to have a program depending on what equipment you have. I mean, typically we're going to have the overarching safety program, which is our injury and illness prevention program, which just talks about different ways that we can identify hazards, different ways that we can educate employees about hazards, the importance of training, the importance of accident reporting, the importance of safety meetings or safety committees, just ways that different mechanisms that we can use to identify and then correct those hazards. Also, employees have to be trained. So if there's any equipment that they're using or any processes that they're doing, they need to be trained on those. Again, safety meetings, equipment operating manuals, and then workplace inspections. All of those are ways that we can identify those hazards. And again, safety is not separate from a workplace culture. They're one and the same in my mind. Now, I mentioned safety committees, so I just wanted to briefly talk about the difference between a safety meeting and a safety committee. Both of them must meet once per month. And if your organization has more than 10 employees, you can have a safety committee. If your organization has less than 10 employees, you can do either one. And the biggest difference between the two is that safety meetings, everyone attends. So oftentimes, if you're a smaller organization, that makes the most sense, right? Everyone's there. A safety committee is a representation of your workforce. So typically, once you get more than 10 employees, you're going to start having safety committees. Another question I get is, what kind of documentation is required? If you have a safety meeting, you kind of need to record your agenda. You need to record who was there. But you don't necessarily have to keep minutes per se, because everyone attended the meeting and they know what happened. If you have a safety committee, because it's a representation of your workforce, you do have to take minutes, and those minutes have to be retained for 3 years. And you're also going to record who was there and what topics you covered. And then again, safety minutes are available to all employees. Typically, if you have a safety meeting and employees want a copy of the agenda, you can give it to them. But again, because they're all there, it's not required in the same way that a safety committee is. Your safety committee members also require additional training. They have to be trained in accident investigation and hazard identification. And that's because safety committee members do quarterly walkthroughs of your workplace. And they also review any accident investigations. So that's why they have to be trained in those two areas. So let's move on to some common workplace hazards that we find. So strains and sprains, equipment, slips, trips, and falls, vehicles, driving, and then a few others. So first we'll talk about strains and sprains. So typically, and to me, I put this one number one because I think this is probably one of the biggest exposures that most of the food hubs have that I see. So lifting injuries, right? It could be from products that we receive from vendors. It could be from moving, packing, loading boxes and bins. It could be placing items on shelving, removing items from shelving, carrying items to vans, loading the van, unloading the van. Like all of those are really good situations where we could have a strain or a sprain. And then poor ergonomics is another one. I'm going to talk about ergonomics a little bit after I talk about lifting. I'll talk about ergonomics next. So when it comes to lifting, we really want to make sure that people are lifting properly. So NIOSH so when we lift, we place force on our lower back. And depending on the position of the body when we lift, we can increase the amount of compressive force that's on the lower back. So NIOSH says 770 pounds of compressive force on the lower back. People shouldn't lift any more than that. And if they do, it puts significant strain on the lower back and could result in injury. And of course, that actual force varies. Obviously, it depends upon who's lifting, the weight that they're using, the different body posture, etc. So here's a chart of that compressive force that can be placed on the back. So if you are standing upright and you lift 20 pounds and you're 10 inches away from the body, that places 170 pounds of compressive force on the back. If you move that box out, now it's 20 inches, you can see the difference between the compressive force. And then if you bend over and lift away from the body, that's 635 pounds of compressive force. And then again, bent over lifting 20 inches away, 1 pound, 20 inches away, you can see even 1 pound is putting a tremendous amount of strain on the lower back. And then again, sitting, leaning forward. So really what this illustrates is the importance of safe lifting techniques. So when we lift, and this graphic here is another example of, as we move away from the body, you can see that the amount of weight that you can safely lift significantly decreases. So that green zone, that's when we can lift the most weight. The yellow zone, we're starting to get away from the body. And then the danger zone, we're starting to get even farther away. And then you can see the danger zone also exists to the area above our shoulders and the area below our knees. So when we're lifting, we want to keep items close to the body. We want to make sure we're using proper lifting techniques. We also want to have good body mechanics. We want to keep our knees, shoulders, and hips aligned at all times. So when we turn with any sort of item in our hands, we want to move our feet, don't twist. Use a team lift or mechanical means whenever you can. And then it's really important that you are training your employees and your volunteers on proper lifting techniques. And then also consider the safety in motion training, which is offered by SAFE. And here's, of course, our safe lifting techniques, right? And the key thing here, and the one thing that my graphic doesn't really show, is once you engage the load and you pull it close to the body, you want to look up. Your chin should be level to the ground. But again, we want to avoid the bending over and lifting, because that is what increases those compressive forces on the back. Ergonomics. So ergonomics specifically is the science of designing the workplace to fit the people who work there. And typically by improving ergonomics, we're going to reduce the discomfort and injuries, and we're going to increase productivity, and we're going to reduce the risk of musculoskeletal disorders. So proper lifting techniques kind of falls under ergonomics a little bit, but there are lots of other things that we're typically doing in work tasks that we're doing that can impact or that can cause strains and sprains or other musculoskeletal disorders. So this is another couple of graphics about that green, sort of that green zone. And you can see again that we want to keep our usual work close to the body and kind of in that certain plane. We want to minimize the amount of time that we're reaching into the yellow or red zone. We want to limit the amount of time that we're reaching over our head or reaching down below our knees. And also, depending on what kind of tasks we're doing, we may need to think about different heights, different work surface heights as well. So as you're kind of looking at your hubs and your organizations and your operations, think about table heights. Think about computer use. How are people using computers? How are they sitting? Where are they using them? And then where are the location of our work tasks in relation to our body and our body position? Are we doing a lot of reaching into that orange or red zone? Or doing a lot of reaching overhead? And the way that we prevent strains and sprains and other ergonomic injuries is we want to make sure that we're fitting the job to the person, not the person to the job. So are there mechanisms and means that we can use to basically, again, fit the job to the person? So, can we use anti-fatigue mats for people who are standing a lot? Can we use laptop stands? Can we use monitor stands? Can we think about lighting? Do we have the ability to have adjustable work or desk heights? And also, it's really important that we take time to actually stretch the muscles that are involved in any sort of repetitive tasks. Again, when we're talking about repetitive tasks, we want to think about the force a task may take, the posture that our body is in, and the frequency with which we do that task. And to minimize repetitive motion injuries, we want to decrease one or more of those stressors. And oftentimes just taking micro breaks and stretching the hands and stretching the arms and stretching the back can reduce that frequency. And then again, thinking about posture. Where are the tasks located? How is our body oriented? We want to keep things in the green zone as much as we can. And then moving on to equipment hazards. So remember, all of the equipment that we're using in the hubs, we just need to make sure that people are trained. And I know sometimes that seems kind of silly, but sometimes when I'm talking about training, maybe I'm talking about like your standard operating procedure, like how we do this safely. Obviously, electric pallet jacks are considered a powered industrial truck. So actually people have to be certified to operate those. But just make sure that you have documentation or some sort of standard operating procedure on how these pieces of equipment are being used. And then make sure that we're doing inspections. We're doing regular inspections of our equipment. And then if there's any PPE that's required, we're using that PPE where and when it is required. Next, slips, trips, and falls. So we can have slips and we can have trips. So slips are typically something that's on the floor. So our foot loses traction and we actually fall backwards. So it could be water, food, grease, oil, soap, debris. A trip is when our foot strikes something and we actually go forward, right? Our forward momentum has stopped. Typically, we're going to see a change in elevation, maybe obstructed view, maybe there's low light. And the way that we prevent slips, trips, and falls is really making sure that we have good housekeeping. So we're cleaning up spills immediately. We're keeping hallways clear of potential tripping hazards. We're also covering cables, hoses, cords. We're making sure that our work areas are well lit. And if you have areas that aren't well lit, can we light them up? Are there ways that we can call out changes in elevation, whether it's, yellow paint, or are there areas where we could maybe add some grip tape if we've got a slippery kind of area, or walk off mats or something like that, or rugs. Next, we'll talk about vehicle. So lots of hubs have some sort of vehicle that employees or volunteers are driving. So again, what we want to do is we want to just make sure that our drivers understand the hazards of distracted driving. There are 3 kinds of distractions. There's a visual distraction, right? So if we're just looking at something, rubbernecking, I think it oftentimes is called. There's manual distraction. So that could be your phone, but it could also be eating. It could also be combing your hair. It could also be, getting something from behind you. And then there's cognitive distractions. And cognitive distractions, typically we think of cell phones. But oftentimes they could be an audiobook. I know I personally have driven past to exit because I have been listening to my audiobook because I'm not paying that much attention. And you can have a combination of any of those things. There are other hazards that are on the road. Maybe there's construction, maybe there's wildlife, maybe the road conditions, maybe you have ice, maybe you have snow, maybe there's pedestrians. Again, it's really making sure that people are fully present when they are driving. I also recommend that you have some sort of injury or accident kit in the van or in the delivery van as well. So what happens if there's property damage? What happens if there's an injury accident? What happens if the van has a flat tire? Do they have the triangles? Do they know who to call? Do the individuals have a high vis vest that they can put on so that people can see them? And the way that we prevent some of the hazards from driving is, again, really minimize distracted driving. If you need to make a call, or you need to text, or you need to get directions or anything like that, just pull over to do that. It's not advisable to be driving and talking at the same time, because again, you're not fully present, you're not fully focused on the road. And then what I say to kind of the hub managers is try to avoid texting or calling your employees or volunteers when they're out driving around. Emergencies, I always like to remind folks about emergency response. So it's important that your employees and volunteers know what to do in emergency, how should they respond, where to evacuate, how do they get out, where do they assemble, and when is it safe to go in the building, if it is ever safe to go back in the building. So maybe, get your team together, identify what kind of emergencies are likely to occur in your location, and then again, prevention. So after you figure out what your potential emergencies are, develop your response. Also make sure that you have fire extinguishers, that you're maintaining and checking your fire extinguishers, conduct an annual fire drill, prevent the accumulation of flammable or combustible materials, watch out for electrical hazards. So making sure that electrical panels are closed, that you don't have any open circuits, also that you don't have any uncovered electrical outlets or holes in the side of your panels, or that we're using a lot of daisy chaining, which is when we have extension cords plugged into extension cords or extension cords plugged into surge protectors, or we have exposed wires in any cords, or that we're overloading any kind of outlet or any kind of surge protector. And then make sure that people are trained on their response. A few other hazards that may also come up. So chemicals. So again, this is just a matter of assessing what chemicals you have in your workplace. If you have household chemicals in household quantities and you're only using them the same way you would in your house, you don't necessarily have to have an SDS sheet for them. But if you have any other chemicals, like if you have a commercial dishwasher, those chemicals are going to require an SDS sheet. If you're doing any kind of sanitation, those chemicals might also require an SDS sheet. So again, we have to have the SDS sheet on site, and then employees have to be trained how to use that chemical and what personal protective equipment they might need while they're using it. Usually, if you have to compile an SDS book or you've got a few SDS sheets, you might as well just put all of the chemicals in there as well. If you have any sort of forklift or electric pallet jack, remember that requires a certification, which is a classroom as well as performance, and then they have to be recertified every 3 years. So that will be important to make sure you've got that done. There could be some other introduced hazards into the place. So if you get any new equipment, make sure that employees have been trained on any new equipment. If you have any changes or updates to any of your processes, again, that would be something that employees would need to, and then volunteers would need to be updated on. If you get a new vehicle or a different vehicle, that would be another one. Just again, making sure that people are updated and trained. If you move locations, now you may have new or different hazards that you didn't have before. And also be thinking about shared spaces. I've seen that quite often, where spaces are shared between either between vendors or between many different people. So again, you may have to come together with whoever that you're sharing the space with, and making sure that they're storing their stuff safely and that they're not creating additional hazards in any of those shared spaces. And then briefly, just a reminder that all accidents have to be reported, and an accident investigation must be completed. So your 801 form is not an accident investigation. Accident investigations are all about finding facts, not fault. And we're always looking for the root cause of an accident, typically something that's systemic rather than a surface cause. And I, again, encourage reporting. I say big or small, report them all, because sometimes those near misses can illustrate gaps in they may be a hazard that we didn't realize was there. And then lastly, basically, whenever we're planning our work, we want to keep safety kind of in the top of our mind. I always like to say never underestimate the ingenuity of people. They'll figure out how to get some stuff done sometimes, and sometimes it's not always the safest way. So don't put employees in a position to take shortcuts or to get the job done. Encourage them to ask questions, encourage them to think about their safety and their coworker safety. Obviously, model safe behavior, correct unsafe behavior or unsafe actions or unsafe conditions. Hold people accountable if necessary. Just remind them that being safe and working safely is part of the job. And that goes for both your employees and your volunteers as well. And remember, at the end of the day, it's really about everyone going home safely, leaving in the same vehicle that they came in, because nothing that we do at work is worth getting hurt over. So yeah, so the key to any successful safety program is everyone working together to identify and correct hazards, making sure that you're doing some sort of monthly safety committee or safety meeting, making sure that folks are reporting accidents and incidents promptly. We talked about the common workplace hazards. These are the ones that I've been kind of seeing at most of the hubs, and these are common for a lot of organizations as well. And then again, that my whole point is that strong safety culture is part of a vibrant workplace culture. It's a place where employees feel valued, they feel listened to, and they feel part of the solution and part of something bigger. So I just think it's just part of the fabric of what you're doing and who you are. And that is it for me. So I will stop sharing, and we'll see if anybody has any questions.
Do we have any questions out there? I can't believe that there's not a single question. That doesn't sound like you guys.
I have one.
Okay.
Let's go for it.
Where's a good place to get the SDS sheets? I know they're out there.
Typically what I find is easiest is to go to the manufacturer, and you'll actually go onto their website, and you might have to look under technical, or they'll have a section for SDS, but the manufacturer suppliers, they have to provide SDS sheets. So typically that's where I go, the manufacturer's website.
Thank you.
Great question.
I have a question. So we went through a safety assessment by our payroll company before we applied to the worker safety grant. And they told me that if our employees work from home, that our inspection should also include the home environment where they work, and that we're responsible for making sure that their workspace at home meets our criteria. But then I don't know how, that seems like invasive to me. And then how do you enforce something like that? You know?
Yeah. And typically I find that your insurance company is definitely, they're going to be very much about loss prevention. So they're trying to be very proactive about, my guess is, ergonomic strains and sprains kind of injuries. So I think the best thing to do, because I agree, it can be tough to sort of say, hey, I'm your employer and I need to come in your house and, like, see how you're standing and see what you're doing. So, I mean, I think encouraging them to, think about their space, and maybe they can send you pictures of their workspace, kind of, or maybe someone who lives with them can take pictures of them in front of the computer and stuff like that. And then you could assess, you could be like, oh, wow, it looks like your monitor's a little bit low. Maybe we want to get you a laptop stand. What kind of mouse are you using? So I think it's more of engaging in a conversation, and just, saying, hey, we want to make sure that you're not ending up with any ergonomic type of injuries, and we're here if you need assistance with that. But I have seen other employers do something similar, where they're asking for pictures of their workspace when they're in it, when they're using it, to kind of help determine. Is that kind of helpful? Answer your question? Yeah.
Other questions? I'm curious if anyone on this call has a safety committee or holds safety meetings. Is anyone doing any of that at this point?
We have a safety committee at Hummingbird.
Great.
I'm not on it, so I can't give a lot of details about it, but they do really great work.
Yeah, and you're a bigger employer than most of the hubs that are on this call, so I'm I'm not surprised, of course, that you guys have a safety committee and that you are doing safety meetings, and you probably are already getting worker safety evaluations or have a company that you're working with at this point. I'm guessing.
I think we
Jack?
do. I'll check in with Kristen and Emma about it. We definitely really care about safety and agree with what Deb said. That's like the core of your culture. And so it's really important to us to make sure that we keep our workers safe.
Great. That's great to hear. Jack, you have a safety committee. Can you tell me more about like how it meets and how you manage that and integrate that into your food hub?
Sure. So we don't have a food hub, so I don't know. I'm hoping to build one, but we don't have anything I would call that. But we are like a 10-person organization, so just at the minimum that requires a safety committee. Yeah, they meet monthly and do quarterly inspections, and also do things like send out like vehicle. We do have to do regular vehicle inspections, and they sort of lead that work of encouraging that, and then led the work of doing like job reviews to make sure everybody knows sort of what the physical requirements of everybody's jobs are and what the safety requirements are. It's boring, but it's super important. I shouldn't say it's it's different work than am usually involved in. It's probably really exciting for some folks. But it's the important work of keeping things going and keeping things safe, which is a lot of like being involved with like checking OSHA documents and like all of that stuff. So happy to answer any questions. I'm not currently on it, but anything I can offer, I will.
Yeah, I can say this is probably not the most sexy topic that we've ever had. I'm sure we all get really excited about building new walk-ins and buying new trucks and doing all these really cool things. But if you've ever worked somewhere, and I have, where someone's been seriously injured, it is a really sobering experience to realize the things you do could permanently alter someone's life, health, and well-being. So I do really encourage you to, despite the lack of sexiness of talking about it, figure out how to incorporate it into your hub's operations. I know like Agricultural Connections with our truck driver got into a minor wreck a couple of years ago. Things happen in our world, and we are operating pieces of equipment that can cause pretty serious harm. Yes, including our trucks. Pretty exciting to think about how those lift gates can go wrong. There's a lot of things that can cause some real harm. So I would like to really encourage it. Are there folks that have questions about how to form a safety committee or what ways there might be to incorporate it into your already overstretched hub's operations? And I think one way to think about it is you're probably doing some sort of staff meeting here and there of some kind of all hands meeting is probably happening. You're probably having to talk about schedules or other things, adding some time that is dedicated to talking about safety issues would be really helpful. And that's a really easy way to sort of slip it in. Wendy, you came off mute for a second. It looked like you had something to say.
Yeah, I do have questions about that. I wonder if there's some sort of guidelines for maybe not so much forming a committee, but talking about, items to go over if we are maybe, having safety meetings and such. Is there some sort of schematic to follow, Deb?
We have a topic calendar that we've put together that I'm happy to share. And that can be a good way. And OSHA doesn't necessarily, they don't have specific, well, they don't necessarily have a specific calendar that you have to follow. A lot of times what will end up generating your topics will be what people are bringing up. But like I said, we also have a topic calendar, which can be helpful because you can say, well, this month's topic is bloodborne pathogens, or, this month's topic is slips, trips, and falls. And it doesn't mean that you never talk about slips, trips, and falls at any other time during the year, but it just gives you kind of something to talk about that particular month. And that can be really helpful for a safety meeting because then at least once a year, you're kind of reviewing all of these topics with everyone. There are some trainings that you have to do for staff that you have to do annually. But those are things, they're not necessarily, I mean, yes, they are safety topics, but and you would cover those in the course of your year, and you can use those as your topic for the month as well. But yes, so I'm happy to share a calendar.
That'd be
And-
great.
Oh, Sarah, go ahead.
Yep. So when I was working in manufacturing, what we did was we had teams on the floor. It was fairly large manufacturing, but I think it would work in small kitchens as well. And we called it the safety toolkit meetings. And we had a requirement that at the beginning of every shift, we actually did have a quick discussion about safety for the day. And Deb, I think that's awesome that you have different topics. So that would give supervisors or floor managers something to sort of talk about and discuss. And people do take a lot of pride in being safe in manufacturing. So you can post, 500 days, no accidents. You might see that sometime when you're going by a large production facility. It's just as important for small facilities and can be celebrated. So you could actually have a goal of so many days without an accident and then have a pizza party or something like that. It just really gives something for people to look forward to. And a little bit of competition is always fun.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's a number of different incentive programs you can use, including Days Without Injury. A lot of times I'll see organizations do, if people are, identifying and correcting hazards, like it's a good catch program. So they've identified something and they've corrected it. I would say the only thing that can happen sometimes if you focus too much on Days Without Injury is it can cause people to not report. So you just have to make sure that doesn't happen. But usually in smaller organizations, that's a little bit easier to manage. But yeah, I say celebrate the wins for sure. For sure.
Wendy, an easy entry point, when you're just starting out with having these conversations more regularly and trying to engage people around it. And a lot of times when you first start a program, folks will be like, oh, okay, so boring. It is really asking them, what's broken? What's pinched your fingers in the last month? What's making it a pain in the butt to work? Because as it turns out, a lot of the things that make your work less efficient and more annoying are also things that cause injury. And people are real happy to have things be a lot less annoying to work with. What knives aren't sharp? I think you're doing production work where you are. What's a pain in the butt? Is it hard to get those boxes, those that we have stacked on pallets in the back that are around a corner that you have to go in and then back out and turn? Is that actually working for folks? Is there something we can do? And a lot of times people will get really engaged around that solution creating because it makes their job functionally lighter and easier and better and less pissy, frankly. Like if you've ever worked in a hot kitchen or a hot warehouse and you're moving a bunch of boxes and you're using equipment that isn't working for you and you're tripping over mats that have curled edges, like those are the things that send your blood pressure up to the very top, and they're unsafe. Like, why don't we fix those?
Yeah, very true.
Other questions or examples?
Hi, I don't have a question, but I just want to give props to Deb. She's done I'm from Bohemia Food Hub, and Deb has done 2 assessments, just a minute, sorry, of course that happens. 2 assessments of Bohemia, over the last few years. The first, hang on, I'm gonna take this kid. I just have to get him a snack and I want to come back and say what I have to say. Sorry about that.
You do that. Kim's going to talk about the assessments that she's had at Bohemia, but I just want to say that I get a copy of all of these assessments, not because like I'm the teacher and it's your report card or anything like that, but I use those to help us frame up any other training and technical assistance that we need to provide, or ask Deb to do specific things and provide specific things for us. And I've seen over the 2-year time span of Bohemia's specific assessments, so like, oh, this thing was pointed out as a potential hazard last year, and this year that didn't show up as a potential hazard. So like these assessments really help improve what your operation looks like.
Yeah, sorry about that. Honestly, this is a perfect example of you don't know what you don't know. And Deb coming through with the lens that she has on safety to our hubs, especially because I've never built a kitchen before, right? Like, I didn't even know that there was a little tag on the fire extinguisher that you're supposed, this is the biggest lesson I had from our last visit, that you're supposed to every month, you know, make your little indication that you've inspected it and it's all good. And so, and we've since had our fire extinguishers checked by the guys that come and do the things. And so just those little minutia, nuanced details that I had no idea about. Deb knows all about these things. So not only has she come to Bohemia twice, but Bohemia is about to build, like we're doing a major renovation and building our new dream facility. And Deb, I'm excited for Deb to be able to like put her eyes on those plans with that lens of safety to see, is there anything that we're missing here? And anything that we should be adding that we haven't. So as far as like developing and designing our hubs goes, it's an incredible asset to have her come and check out your facilities. Thanks, Deb.
Thanks, Kim.
Thanks for that endorsement, Kim.
Yeah, love it.
Do we have any other questions for Deb while we have her, or examples or questions generally about how to make these kinds of improvements? And just a reminder, if you do, oh, looks like Baron, yeah, would you like to? You came off mute there. No. Just a reminder, if you haven't had a safety assessment and you would like one, let me know. You can reach out by email and I can help get that arranged for you.
Mm-hmm.
All right, you guys. Thanks, Deb.
Mm-hmm.
I appreciate
Thanks,
it.
everyone.
And we got another endorsement from Aaron. Aaron says that Deb is great. Deb, you're great. Thanks for taking care of us and helping us make these improvements in our network. It's appreciated.
No problem. All righty. Take care, everyone.
All right, see you later, Deb. All right, you guys. The second half of our discussion today it's really just a roundtable, an open discussion on wanting to learn and share more about what community partnerships you have, like what other organizations in your community you're partnering with, what kind of work you're doing together, and in your opinion, what makes those partnerships work? Like, what's the recipe for success? I think we all have some different partnerships and have had varying experiences. Some have been really great, some have been less great. And I think it's a really good time for us to have this conversation as a group so that we can learn from each other. Does anybody want to start with Kim Johnson again?
While I've got the kids at bay. Yeah, I love this one. I love partnerships. It has been a game changer for me with Bohemia from the beginning, specifically for our programming. We do youth programming and we do Latino programming. And both of those buckets of programming are made possible by strong partnerships with, for the Latino programming, our regional well, I mean, they're very broad sweeping, but it's Rural Development Initiatives is the partner that we work with. They work Oregon, Washington, and Idaho, actually, but they are very strong in Lane County. We partner with them specifically for our Spanish language business development classes. And in particular, we designed Starting a Food Business series. It's a 6-week series. And it's delivered in Spanish. And it is an incredible program that is has been offered at Bohemia twice to a full class of 25 Latino participants. We offer childcare and meals for those classes, and it's just extraordinary because it's what RDI is already doing. And so for a moment, I actually applied for a grant thinking that it would be good for us to hire a bilingual business mentor for our Latino tenants. And I'm really glad I didn't do that, and that instead I lean into that partnership and I write in funds to support, like to throw their way, for them to come and bring their already existing staff of bilingual business mentors to serve Bohemia's Spanish speaking and Mom speaking tenants. Mom is the language of the Guatemalan community in Cottage Grove, which is very large. And so that's been a game changer for us to be able to lean into that partnership and lift that programming within Bohemia to be able to serve our Spanish speaking tenants and help them start and grow businesses. And our youth programming, we partner with local schools that already have culinary programs, and those teachers come to use our kitchen with our resident. We have a resident baker now, and it's often baking that's really exciting for the students. And so we've created programming where we're leaning again into the existing staff at the schools that are doing culinary programming. And in this particular case, we have also a staff person that is working with that group to kind of guide whatever activity they're working on. So, and also the school district is a partner of ours. They're in our area leaning heavily into CTE programming. And so they know Bohemia is available with resources like a kitchen and a food truck to be able to launch those kind of programs in the future with the youth community. So those are my two biggest, like, obvious partnerships, not to mention the partnerships with like that we develop through OCFSN and these food hub calls, like where we can make sure that we're connecting with each other and see ways where we can align. And so that's like another level of partnership, but those are my two most active.
Kim, when you say you partner with someone, like what does that really mean in practical terms? So when Bohemia's partnering with like RDI, does that mean RDI is doing classes at Bohemia Food Hub for Bohemia's tenants specifically, and you're helping fundraise to have those classes paid for, or like what is the on the ground meaning of that?
Yeah, it's both. And so they write Bohemia into their grants because their work is one of the buckets of their work is offering, it's called Pasos al Éxito, Paths to Success. It's a existing class and they offer it all over Oregon. And so they now write Bohemia in as a regular location that they come and repeat the class at. I think it's like $40-some thousand is like the dollar amount that it takes to actualize those 6 or 8 weeks of programming. And so would be cost prohibitive for Bohemia to allocate that amount of funding to them. So they bring in the bulk of it, and then Bohemia adds to that a little bit, but primarily the funding that Bohemia fundraises for and allocates to RDI is for that one-on-one mentorship where they're continuing to come in and serve specifically Bohemia's tenants that have gone through that programming and need one-on-one assistance to kind of get their business actualized. So that's one example. We also collaborate on grants. We're Business Oregon's TA program. So we're partners with them in that grant. So we're a sub grantee in that grant. So there's like different kind of ways that we arrange those partnerships with RDI. That's our most established partnership. It's a little looser with the school system. So we're writing grants for our youth programming, and we are going to the schools to say, we've done that already. And so the schools know that we already have funding to support them coming to Bohemia to do different kinds of activities. So they don't need to allocate their own funds to come and do those things. Like we don't charge them. We just use the grants that we have, our youth funding, to support that. Does that answer the question?
Yeah, that's really helpful. What other partnerships do folks have, and what do they look like? Carrie, I think you have some partnerships with folks that, no, you're eating, sorry.
That's okay. I think our strongest partnership, aside from Rogue Valley Food System Network, which is kind of like the backbone of all of our Southern Oregon food system connections, but our strongest partners are our health centers. So Siskiyou Community Health Center, All Care Health, and Rogue Community Health Center out of Jackson County. And they all started with just an employee work wellness program. So, which was basically a deal we arranged with our CSA program. Like, we offer free delivery if we have like a certain number minimum of orders. But then that evolved over the years. So Siskiyou Community Health Center now subsidizes up to $150 of every employee's CSA now. And it's evolving every year. And now they're asking us to do additional programming. So we're using some of their community spaces for community outreach and programming. And we're even taking it a step further. All Care Health is asking us to host like a volunteer day, a day, a health wellness day on the farm, where they would come out and volunteer for 2 hours. We'll do like a meditation, have a freshly prepared meal together, and they're funding that. So it's just evolving as kind of we build this relationship. But it kind of all started with CSA, and they are our biggest customers. And every time we need to reach a demographic of our community, that's where we go. We're like, how do we reach this population in Wolf Creek or Illinois Valley? And they're like, oh, we have an office there, or we have they call them direct care providers, which are like the smaller health centers that they work with. So that's been our strongest channel as far as community relationships.
What do you think the secret sauce is around why that relationship is working?
I think because our mission and our goals align. So because it all focuses on health. They're really not interested a whole lot about the economic development of our producers. They're focused on improving the health and how it aligns with the Strategic Health Plan Initiative, the SHIP plan. And so whenever they see programs that are partially or the infrastructure's in place, with someone local, it's really easy for them to say, let's do something together.
That's awesome. So sort of mutual need. You are aligned around the same kinds of things. Rose, it looks like you guys have some good partnerships.
Yeah, and maybe I think Delaney's on here too. Maybe she can chime in. I was listing out, we have some partnerships that we would like to develop more with these two sites where we have alternate pickup locations for our market and for our CSAs. And then we donate produce and like perishable items to programs that do like some food access programming. And then we work a lot with OSU Extension for education, farmer outreach, and I forgot nutrition. They have like SNAP-Ed folks that we were just talking about, inviting them to do like tastings and things at our farm tour day. So yeah, I think it's really wonderful to when you can find other organizations that, like Carrie was saying, kind of share a mission or have an overlapping mission, because that just expands your reach and your capacity.
Other partnerships out there. Thanks, Rose. Other partnerships out there, other relationships, or folks that have questions about how you build these relationships in the first place. It's like a really quiet group today. I'm not used to you guys being this quiet. I think, oh, sorry, Food Roots. Lindsay, are you on the call? That's Lindsay today, right?
Hi, yep, I just want a video. I'm in a bit transit between meetings today. Yeah, so we have some really wonderful partnerships with our schools where years ago we've established school gardens. And then we are really fortunate to have another school that reached out to us this year to build a garden there. And at 3 out of 4 of these sites, OFB has actually put in food pantries at these schools for the students and their families to access. So all the produce from these gardens that is harvested, if like the volunteers get a small amount to take home, and then the rest of it, so 656 pounds total last year was donated to the food pantries on site. And so that's really useful because when we have these partnerships with the schools, they can incorporate the gardens as they would like to kind of into their classes during the year. And then, but in the high growing season, high harvest season, when school is out of session, we recruit volunteers to help with these gardens outside of the school hours. And so when we are applying for grants, we write these partnerships and garden supplies and staff time into different grants.
That's really great. Thank you, Lindsay. I didn't realize you guys, I knew you were doing the garden box stuff, but I didn't realize that you were sort of managing them when schools are out. Kiara, it looks like you're getting ready to say something.
I'm off or on my camera. It's really windy. So if the noise is like too much, let me know. But it's such a funny question because I feel like literally everything we do is based on partnerships with the Gorge Farmer Collective, and like even our warehouse site, I'd call it more of a partnership than a lease. All of our like retail or direct to consumer like pickup posts are partnerships, and like our major sales outlets. And yeah, I don't know, I won't go into like the types of partnerships that much, but I think what I wanted to add is like I've never built a partnership over email. Like it requires so much like in person, like you get coffee, you like get lunch with people, and just I don't know, there's like email culture is like really a thing, but I have never found that to serve me for my needs. Sorry, I'm walking my dog too.
Kiara, that's a really good point about how these partnerships are extensions of personal relationships too. That we put the time in and get in person with folks, get on the phone with folks, not just drop an email, making a request for service. It looks like Josephine County folks have something to say.
It's me again. Chad and I are sharing a computer. Yeah, he reminded me of two more situations. One is the Cave Junction Farmers Market, and they're the only farmers market that has actually invited us as a food hub to resell all of our producers' products. Because most of the other farmers markets see that as a conflict or competitive to the other vendors who are there. But it has really been instrumental in providing food for that community in the Illinois Valley that is so much a food desert. And even the vendors that are there have so little as far as volume. They just don't have enough to really meet the community's needs. So that has been really instrumental in just increasing our food reach to that area. And then most recently, I'm sure you have all seen Grants Pass in the news and the issues of our homeless population and how they're constantly being ousted and moved and penalized and with no real resolution. And so last week we were invited to if you can imagine, a collaborative effort with the city and UCAN, and we've been invited to participate in this leadership team to develop a housing stabilization center, and we will be one of several food sources. So it's just starts with one, and then your name starts to float around and people say, hey, will you be part of our efforts?
That's a great example. I mean, Carrie, you have really, in the last 2 years, sort of really networked the heck out of your project. And now you're in the news. You're very popular. You're very popular these days.
So far in good ways. We'll try to keep it positive.
Right. Other examples of partnerships that folks are working on or relationships that you're hoping to build, or questions that you might have about forming relationships. And the quiet again. All right, we'll move on from this topic. Are there things that you guys want to talk about? What are the burning topics happening in your world that you'd like to talk about with this group? Or are we going off our cameras 20 or so minutes early?
I was wondering, so I'm just tired today, as I have been the last few weeks. There's just a lot going on. I was wondering if there were thoughts on pivoting funding. I know this is something that's come up before. We have 3 USDA grants that we are subrecipients of that are frozen. Not sure if they're going to be restarting. I just was wondering if anyone had thoughts about other ways to be fundraising this year, since federal funds are challenging.
Rose, it's a good question, and I'm looking at the composition of the call, and there may not be a ton of folks who are directly responsible for fundraising who are on this call, and I see we've got a couple of our for-profit hubs. So Sarah has a response, but you may not get a huge response because of the particular composition today. Sarah.
So if you go on the Northwest Rocky Mountain Regional Food Business Center website and select the Scaling Food Entrepreneurs theme team, our business builder grants are open right now, and they're specifically for shared use kitchens and food hubs. So I'd encourage you to take a look at that funding. And Colorado State and OSU have made a commitment to go ahead and fund those grants as far as I'm aware of. So I would take some time to take a look at that application and see if it might be a fit for your facility.
That's great. Thank you.
Also, this is Zoe here at Valley Flora. I can't turn my video on because we don't have enough bandwidth, but I've actually been trying to reach out and network with other farms and hubs that have been affected by the grant freezes to just try to get a head count in Oregon for how many of us there are. We've been affected as well, 3 of our grants, and I've been talking to our congressional staffers, the governor's office, and kind of hoping to figure out how many of us are in the same boat and take it to the Attorney General's office to see if there's any kind of recourse or class action suit or anything. Because I don't get the sense from my congressional reps that there's any action plan in Congress at this point. So some of ours are really time sensitive, but I imagine there's strength in numbers. So if anyone wants to reach out to me, I'm trying to start that effort. I also saw there was an opportunity to tell your story with the National Young Farmers Coalition. I don't know where that's headed, but again, it might be a place to get all of the data, all of the hands raised. But I can put my email in the chat, and please reach out if you want to connect more.
Thanks, Zoe. That's great. Carrie, it looks like you've got something else again. Oh, you are muted.
Oh, thank you. I have a question, and I see Aaron may or may be able to answer this. So we're trying to work out some logistics to move product between Klamath Grown and us. And we've come up with some questions about whether if the producer that's in Klamath Falls wants to sell through the farm collective, our farm collective. So does it make sense for them to subscribe to our food hub or to sell it to Klamath and move it through Klamath? In which case there's like 2 markups that happen. Or do we all just agree on a price, that doesn't have markup? I'm just wondering like how that was handled in maybe that trial that happened up north, or if any of the other food hubs have examples on how they navigated those issues.
Hi, that's such a good question. The answer I can give you is that multiple different versions of this have been trialed during those trials we've done so far. Without getting it further into the details, which I'm happy to do with you off this call if you want, truly. It really just depends on what is going to work to cover the costs of the transportation, is what I would say. Like for people who there is a very clear way to calculate this is what our cost is, and we can just add that as an upcharge or as a service charge essentially to the producer involved. Klamath Grown could potentially put that on to the producer or to you, whatever way that billing needs to work, versus if it was something that was really difficult to transport, it went a really long distance, it was harder to calculate, or the hub was maybe willing to take a little bit more of the cost on, then a different percentage of margin worked better. But if it's going to be an ongoing relationship, my recommendation would be to try to figure out about how much is moving, about how frequently, and what the costs are associated, and if two markups or a fee is the better way to make sure that it's sustainable for the businesses involved. But happy to like go into how to calculate that and how we calculated that with you. We have a calculator for it. Yeah.
And it's a little premature to announce this because I don't have all the signed contracts in place, but there is an extension of that working group of the Hub Trade Network, and part of their job, which Aaron is a part of, and we'll get into more detail in another meeting, is to identify some of those key pieces of information that we need to have to actually truly on a regular basis move food from point A to point B for all of our health and well-being. Delaney.
I just had a follow-up question for Aaron.
did anyone ever purchase off of the whole, like a wholesale list from a hub, or was it outside of the online platform? Yes, mostly when there was already a delivery or transfer happening of some kind. And then, like, for example, I knew that I was going to be getting some product from Kiara, and so then I went online and added on to it. I think we actually did something similar with Klamath Grown once, where there was going to be some delivery coming, and it was based on an online list, but we did it through email just because of the volume involved. Maybe it wasn't like totally tracking through the site, I think. But yeah, we kind of, I think, to my knowledge, the times that people did that, it was mostly as a like, okay, let's make this trip worthwhile, so let's add some stuff onto it. And it may or may not have been through the online portal versus like, look at what I have online and let me know what you want and I'll add it to your order. Yeah, that's, I think, the info. I can give you more specifics if you want them, but I think that's what I've got off the top of my head.
Other burning questions in this group. I like that we got completely derailed on Trade Network. Tells me that that's an important part of what we're doing. What else are you all interested in learning from each other today? Also, Farron, I'd like to say hi. You've been on email lists for me a couple of times, and I've never actually seen your face. So I'm really happy to say hi to you and actually meet you. And I'm glad that CritFic is starting to participate in this network as well.
Yeah, hi. If you don't mind, I'll introduce myself real quick. My name's Farron. I'm the Community Development Interim Manager right now at the Columbia River Intertribal Fish Commission. We currently have an LFPA grant through USDA. Ours was not pulled, thankfully, but we do have some opportunities to purchase from socially disadvantaged farmers. So maybe that's something we could talk about. Maybe we can help out somehow. I know it's not a lot of funding for our priority is to purchase from our fishers and our tribal producers and stuff like that. But I did put a small pot aside. So maybe that's something we can chat about maybe at a different meeting. I'll put my contact info in the email. But yeah, thanks we have another meeting at 1:30 at 1 the same time this goes on. So I try to hop on as I can. But it's nice to see you guys and thanks for having me.
Yeah, we're so glad to have you a part of it. And the group that we're working on that Trade Network will be in contact, I'm sure. Because also we want fish.
Yeah. Yes, please.
We want fish, and I think you want some of our veg, so I think we can work something out.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Other questions or topics that we want to get out while we have each other? No. Evan, it looks like you're getting ready to have something to say.
Oh yeah, well, since we're doing introductions, I just wanted to say hi to folks. My name's Evan Lewark, and I do work with food hubs and kind of food systems orgs in the region. I'm from Washington, and I worked at the Northwest Food Hub Network and was at Puget Sound Food Hub for a number of years. So just stopping by to say hi. I was scheming with Kiara this morning, and she said I should make an appearance. So I'll pop my email in the chat if anyone has any questions. But yeah. I do food systems consulting, and yeah, Sydney and I have talked like once in the last 6 months, but
yeah, I think we
owe
talked
you
at
an
some
email
point.
and so.
Good. Well, welcome. I'm glad you joined for the day. Other things that we want to share, topics we want to talk about, questions we have for each other. All right, you guys. I don't see. Oh, Sarah, did you just come off mute?
Well, I was wondering if Sydney and I are talking about having some additional webinars where we talk about different types of food products and dig a little deeper into food science and processing and packaging and things like that. And we had chosen a few topics from the Food Innovation Center because we already have the materials available. But I was wondering if there's anything more specifically that this group would be interested in, like maybe you would like to have a 1-hour seminar on acidified foods, or maybe you would like a 1-hour seminar on, you know, how to process vegetables, or anything like that. We would be happy to sort of put that information together for a presentation. So if you would let Sydney or myself know if you have a burning idea, we would love to know what that is and then prepare information from that.
Cool. Other topics, questions? I like that this is like gone all over the place. It's great. Is that Buck? Good to hear your voice.
Yeah, so Sarah, we would definitely like to do something with the Food Innovation Center. I know we've talked about this numerous times or whatever. So I don't know what that could be. I know many years ago we did some product development on our Mid-Columbia salmon, the Thule, but I don't know if there's a way to do anything with testing of like value added, things like that for labels, food nutrition things. That's something that our fishers have had, or after we've had our HACCP classes, that those kind of questions have came up to our instructors. So we would definitely be interested. Cryptic would. Working with Sydney, of course, and the Food Innovation Center.
Cool. Sarah's busy taking notes. I don't know if you are actually on your computer or not, Buck, but I can see that she's taking notes on the conversation. What else, you guys? Should you get 10 minutes back in your life? A 10-minute break between meetings? I see a couple of nodding heads. Carrie's laughing. Jude has some interest in soup making from off-looking veggies and fruits. For Sarah. And pressure canning meat. All right, you guys. Thanks for coming. Thanks for participating. And we'll see you next time.
Thank you.
All righty. Bye-bye.
Bye, all.
Thanks.